So welcome everyone to the Bridge Over Adversity class presented by Kevin Desrosiers, two-time distinguished mentor. My name is Laurie Fitzgerald and I work at the administrative building here at the library. This class is being held by the District 8 Toastmasters in Eastern Missouri and Southern Illinois. Toastmasters International's mission is to empower individuals to become more effective communicators and leaders. Tonight's presenter, Kevin, has delivered keynotes in Australia, South Africa, and several cities across the United States. He speaks to audiences about overcoming obstacles in life, effective public speaking, and the keys to mentoring and being mentored. So Toastmasters isn't a class, but it is an experience featuring a Learn by Doing program. They teach the skills of running a meeting, giving prepared speeches, providing and receiving feedback, speaking without preparation, and holding an office. So Kevin, welcome.
Oh, thank you. Glad to be here. And welcome everybody. I really appreciate your attending tonight. And what I would like to talk to you tonight about is my new book, Bridge Over Adversity, True Stories About Overcoming Personal Challenges. What I will do is tell you the stories of 3 of the 12 characters in there. And from that, you are going to learn how they overcame severe adversity in their lives and some of the traits that they had that enabled them to overcome that. So when you walk away, you will have some new tools in your toolkit on how to overcome your own adversities. But first, I would like to start with the story about myself, because a lot of people ask me, why did you write this book? And there's an easy answer to that. It was inspired by my mom and my dad. My dad, his parents immigrated from Canada in a town called Saint-Ami, just outside of Montreal, a French-speaking community, a farm town. My dad was born in the United States, but grew up speaking French. He did not learn English until he was in high school. And in high school, he dropped out, went into the service, and then went overseas and was in Germany. That is where he met my mom. And when he met my mom, they hit it off well, got married. They had myself and my sister. And when they got back to the United States, my dad and mom said, you know, we have to do something to make life better for our children. So my dad broke that chain of poverty in our family. He sacrificed. What did he do? He used the GI Bill to get his college education. He first got his GED, but for the better part of 4 years, my sister and I never saw my dad because he was either going to night school to get his degree and working during the day, or he was going to school during the day and working at night. So my sister and I, when we got up in the morning, he was already gone to work or school. And when we went to bed at night, he was either at work or school. So we did not see much of my dad for 4 years, but he sacrificed to make life better for our family. And when he did that, my mom was the glue that held the family together because she had to take on a lot of responsibilities so my dad could better his career. They also instilled strong values in my sister and I, and they encouraged us. Matter of fact, they didn't encourage us. They twisted our arms and made sure we applied ourselves well in school and got a good education. Because of them, my sister and I both have led happy and successful lives. But if they had not made those sacrifices, we would not be where we are today. So I am so thankful for my parents. I have amazing parents. I'm sure you do too. And I hope you appreciate your parents as much as I appreciate mine. When I started thinking about this book, it was the early 2000s. So it was almost 20 years ago. And I had the idea, but I kept procrastinating. And I told a few friends about it. And I go to a Christmas party every year. And one of my friends, Kim DeMott, would say, Kevin, how's the book coming? Well, Kim, haven't started it yet. That went on for 15 years. Finally, I got off the ball and I started working on my book, and I couldn't wait to go to his holiday party. I got there, and when Kim asked me, how's the book coming? I said, Kim, I started the book. So that is where it started. And how did I get the people that I got? I did not know a single person in my book until after the book started. I reached out to friends. I was looking for people with addictions, people that were homeless, people that had faced other adversities in their life, somebody with PTSD, somebody with medical issues. And I have an amazing group of friends. They came through and I started interviewing people and talking to them. It didn't take long for me to realize I am extremely lucky, because the challenges I went through, being a little bit poor when I was young, are nothing compared to the adversity that the people in my book went through. And that's the first lesson I learned in writing this book, is no matter how bad you think you have it, somebody else always has it worse. And that was a good lesson for me to learn. Now, other people say, well, what qualifies you to write this book? And I have my own adversity in life. Once again, not as bad as the people that I interviewed, but to some people, it is a big adversity. And this happened back in 2018. I hadn't weighed myself in months because I was afraid to. I was getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And in 1 month, I was retiring. I was retiring on Friday, April 13th. And I decided finally, I am going to weigh myself. I thought, well, maybe I'm about 250 pounds. I get on the scale. I look down, 288.6 pounds. And folks, that scared the bejesus out of me. I was scared to death, because I don't know about you, but I have seen so many people retire. And a year or two after they retire, I am showing up at their funeral. I did not want to be that person. So I started on my weight loss journey. I started exercising. I signed up for a boot camp and it was working well. And I ate what I thought was halfway well. And I lost the first 30 pounds and was doing pretty good. But then I hit that proverbial brick wall and I could not move forward anymore. So at that time, I did what I should have done years ago. I reached out to a weight loss coach. And that weight loss coach put me on a program, and he taught me the missing component. And the missing component was mindset. It was up here. I knew what to eat. I knew I needed to exercise, but I did not have the right mindset. I did not understand why I was eating and that eating is a necessity. So he changed that for me. And with his help, I lost weight. My first meeting with him, he said, okay, how much weight do you want to lose and what do you want to get down to? I said, well, you know, I was in a hospital a few years ago. I got down to 232 pounds. That sounds like a good number. He looked at me and said, no, lower. Okay. You know, when I got married back in 1986, I weighed 208 pounds. How about 208 pounds? He said, nope, you're going lower. Finally, I just looked at him and said, okay, Charles, I'm not going to play this game anymore. What do you want me to get down to? He said, 199 pounds. I said, okay, we'll do it. And we started, and the weight started coming off. And after I lost another 20 pounds, I was down in my 230s. I spoke at a Toastmasters conference, and there were about 150 people in the crowd. And I gave a speech about my weight loss. And I said, now you hold me accountable. Every time you see me, ask me how my weight loss is coming. And that's part of the plan, is I held myself accountable through other people. I told people, this is what I'm doing. Please hold me accountable. And the weight kept coming off. And I finally got down in September of 2019 to 199 pounds. But I wasn't happy there, because I was so close to losing 100 pounds. I told Charles, my coach, I said, I want to lose that remaining 11 pounds and say I lost 100 pounds. So we reset my goal and I got down to 188 pounds. Now I've been as low as 185 and I've bounced up a little bit now and then, but I stay in a tight 5-pound range for the most part. And what I'm most proud of is for 2 years now, I have kept that weight off. This morning, I weighed 190 pounds. So I'm up 2 pounds, but I'm not going to quibble with 2 pounds on 100 pounds lost. And that's the key, is maintaining. And I really could not have done that without a coach, without my wife, without friends urging me on. So that's one lesson I want you to take from this, is there's always somebody better at doing something than you are, find them, get mentors in life, get coaches. And that's what I did. And that is the reason I was able to lose my weight. But this isn't about me as much as it is about some of the people in my book. And I'm going to start with Cherise Alexander. And the Monday before she started her new job, she found herself sitting on a corner in New York City, homeless with her suitcase. Now, Cherise grew up in Oregon, and when she was 10, her class took a field trip to a lab. She met a woman in a white coat, and this was the smartest person Cherise had ever seen. And Cherise said, you know what? I want to be just like her. She found out that this woman was a virologist. She studied viruses and found ways to combat those viruses. When she talked to her dad that night, they agreed that Cherise has become a virologist, I can't even say that word, and cure people of deadly diseases. Now, her parents placed a high value on education for their children, and they supported her dream. But at age 12, she hit a roadblock. Her dad died unexpectedly. And her mom moved the entire family from Oregon to California so she could be closer to her family. Now, with that income gone, they struggled to make ends meet. And Cherise at the same time said, I am not going to give up on my dream. And her parents had instilled those ethics where she worked hard in school. So she excelled in high school. And when she started touring colleges, she fell in love with UCLA, University of California, Los Angeles. And she told people, this is where I want to go to college. But when it came time to apply for college, her mom said, Cherise, I'm sorry, but we cannot afford this. We do not have enough money. You're going to have to go into the Army and maybe someday later go on to college. But Cherise didn't give up. She refused to give up. She made a deal with her mom. She said, Mom, if I can find enough scholarship money to go to college, will you let me go to college? And if not, I will do what you want me to do, and I will go in the Army. And her mom and her made an agreement. So Cherise learned the ins and outs about applying for scholarships. She found a program that paid for up to 8 college applications. So she applied for 8 of the University of California system schools, including UCLA, and the wait was on. It was just a matter now of hearing back from these schools. Well, Cherise was accepted into all 8 of the schools she applied for. But not only that, she received scholarships to several of them and a full scholarship to her dream school, UCLA. She did well, she graduated, and the next step was grad school. She decided on New York University to do her graduate work, and she used the knowledge she learned applying for scholarships for her first degree to apply for scholarships for her New York University advanced degree. But something else changed too. She received that full scholarship, but when she got there, she started to realize, you know, I wanted to be a virologist, and I've wanted that since I was 10 years old. However, I don't know if I want to be in a lab all day and not deal with people. She preferred that human interaction. And working in the lab in graduate school, she learned she wasn't going to have that, and that just didn't fit her. So she pivoted, and she decided to, after 1.5 years, 1.5 years in grad school, quit graduate school. There was a consequence to that, though. She had a full scholarship. As soon as she did that, she got kicked out of student housing. Now, she had enough credits for her master's, but not her PhD, but her timing could not have been worse. This was 2008. And if any of you remember 2008, that was a horrible year, especially in New York City. The markets just crashed, they plummeted, and people were losing their jobs and nobody was hiring. So Cherise found herself homeless. She started couch surfing. She found friends she could stay with. So she would stay one place for a week, another place for a couple of weeks, and she just kept going from friend to friend to friend. But she couldn't find a job. Eventually, she interviewed for a teaching job at a small local college, and she got that job. So she was excited about that. But the weekend before she started, the friend she was staying with said, Cherise, you can't stay here anymore. I'm kicking you out. So there she was, the Monday before she started her new job, sitting on a corner in downtown Manhattan with her suitcase, completely homeless. She was a week away from starting the job and had to move into a homeless shelter. Now, this was an old, dreary factory building, and she hated it there. Well, she started her new job and loved it, but she did not have enough money to move out of the homeless shelter. And she came home to the shelter one night. She got to a cot that they assigned her, and she looked down, and there was blood on the sheet, and it wasn't her blood. And she just said, I can't do this anymore. But she stayed, and she got to know a social worker there. And this social worker worked with Cherise and got her transferred to a slightly better shelter that she called Shelter 1.0, the next step up. Now, she started saving money and was able to move to another homeless shelter that was for people that had found jobs but didn't have enough money to go out on their own. She had to start paying some bills there, minimal rent money and a little bit for food, but it still allowed her to save and get back on her feet. And she did that. It took several years, but she got back on her feet rather than quit. And she moved back to California to be with her family again and started teaching at a junior college. She realized when she was teaching at the junior college that a lot of the students did not have the prerequisites they needed to do well in college. So she decided to teach in high school instead. And now Cherise is teaching at a high school in the Los Angeles area. She's being successful, she's happy in life, and she's giving back to the community. She's helping others and doing something she completely loves. So I talked about some of the characteristics that people had in common in my book, and I'm going to tell you about 3 of the characteristics Cherise had. Number 1, she was adaptable. She changed. When her life dream wasn't what she thought it would be, she was able to pivot and change. When her mom told her, I can't afford to send you to college, she adapted. She found a way. She also focused on what she could control. She knew that she could control applying for scholarships. She knew that she could control going and looking for a job and working hard at doing what she did. And then finally, she took responsibility. She took responsibility, didn't blame others, and didn't feel sorry for herself. She went out there and she kept moving forward. So that's Cherise's story, Cherise Alexander, an amazing woman. Next, I'd like to talk to you about Eric. And Eric found himself in the county jail with his bond revoked. He was facing life in prison for armed robbery and another 15 years for simple robbery. Eric was born in Bangor, Maine, but when he was very young, his family moved to Florida. And he remembers his childhood being happy. His mom taught him about God, and his dad taught him about sports. He went to a Catholic grade school, and he enjoyed it at first, but he was into sports and on several club teams, but he enjoyed hip hop as well. But his classmates preferred rock and skateboarding. So because of that, his peers made fun of him. They didn't get along well. They didn't share his interests. So it was rough for Eric emotionally. But in 6th grade, he found something that he enjoyed doing that connected him a little bit more with his peers. He found his entrepreneurial spirit. He started selling candy and CD mixes to his classmates, and he had a steady flow of customers. So he was actually making money selling these things to the other students in his Catholic school, and he was the talk of the town. He was enjoying it. But he was playing 2 grades up in sports because it was that good. He was playing with 8th graders. So he wasn't associating with his classmates, his 6th grade classmates. And he went to his teammates' houses on weekends after tournaments, and they were a little bit older, and he got exposed to alcohol and weed. And by the 7th grade, he was getting in fights with his fellow students, and he was having problems at home because of the alcohol and the marijuana that he was doing. And by the end of his 7th grade year, the principal at Eric's school called Eric and his parents in and said, I'm sorry, but we're not letting you come back for your 8th grade next year. So he had a fresh start at a larger school, and he prospered in his 8th grade year and stayed out of trouble. And then he went to high school, and he excelled at basketball, was playing year round, but he also expanded his entrepreneurial spirit. Candy and CDs weren't cool to sell in high school though. So he sold something he knew about, and that was weed. He started selling marijuana. His sophomore year, he got burned out on sports and quit basketball. By his senior year, his life revolved around hanging out with his friends and selling weed, as he calls it. Then he expanded to Xanax and Adderall. So his drug business was growing and growing. Now, this affected his family as well. His parents' home was robbed in the middle of the night because that's where Eric kept his drugs. And he had a big standoff with his family. His sisters were scared to live there because of what Eric was doing. And after a senior year in high school, Eric's parents sent Eric off to live with his half-brother, Jeff, in Denver. Now, Jeff and Eric are polar opposites. Jeff is a Stanford grad. He's very business savvy, and he's a tennis pro. Now, when Eric went there, he started to get his life back together. He was on the right path. He'd quit doing drugs. He had quit drinking, and he was working and starting to turn his life around. But two coworkers walked up to Eric and said, "Hey, Eric, can you get me some weed?" And Eric didn't know why they asked him, but he found them a source. Now, his brother, Jeff, caught him, and Jeff gave him an ultimatum. Jeff said, either you clean up your act or you move back to Florida. Well, Eric took the easy route. He said, you know what? I'm getting tired of living here. I find it easier to be in Florida. I miss my girlfriend. I am moving back to Florida. And he moved back to Florida to live with his girlfriend. And he reestablished his drug dealing connections right away. Another friend of his approached him when he got back and said, hey, my mom's getting multiple prescriptions for the same meds from doctors. And could you sell them for her and me? And he said, well, what do you have? He said, Xanax, Oxycontin, and Roxicodone. He said, of course I can. And now all of a sudden, Eric was full-time drug dealing, and he was bringing in money left and right. At 23, he was living a life that you and I only dream about. But in late 2020, in late 2012, he had a drug deal go bad where he pulled a gun on another dealer, but he escaped. But a few weeks later, because the other drug dealer ratted him out, the police found him and arrested him. He was in prison facing life in jail. He got out on bond and lived in a halfway house. But there he heard stories about other people and the prison sentences they got, and he got scared, so he fled. He broke his bail. 6 months later, he was dealing drugs, and he had another deal go bad. This time he got in a fist fight with the other guy, and the police came. He ran from the police, but they caught him. The police dog caught him, bit his leg, and he had a vicious gash in his leg. His bond was revoked, and now, in addition to facing life in prison, he was facing an additional 15 years for simple robbery. Now, the prosecutor in this case would not plea deal. No matter how hard Eric's attorney tried, they were going to make an example of Eric. But for some reason, Eric got lucky. 1 month before the trial, the prosecuting attorney unexpectedly quit. And the new prosecutor was a friend of Eric's lawyer. Now, this person was a public defender along with Eric's lawyer, and they were friends for many years, and they were able to work out a plea deal. And the plea deal was extremely lenient and beneficial to Eric. He received 4 years for armed robbery, which was the minimum allowed by law, and he received 3 years for the simple robbery conviction. However, they were served concurrently, so he only had to serve 4 years in prison. But this was a wake-up call for Eric, and he called his dad in right before he went to jail or to prison and said, Dad, I need to change my life. I am going to do what it takes to turn my life around. So after being in prison for about 6 months, he reached out to his half-brother, Jeff, and asked him to be his mentor. Jeff sent him 2 books to read and said, you need to read these first, and then we will go from there. He sent him Tony Robbins' book, Awaken the Giant, and Timothy Ferriss's book, The 4-Hour Workweek. And this opened a life that Eric never even knew existed. He started learning about affirmations, the laws of attraction. He started meditating every day and began visualizing his future. Eric was on the right path. And another turning point, and this is a Toastmasters presentation, so hopefully you saw this coming, but he joined a prison Toastmasters club. And yes, we have Toastmasters clubs in prisons to help people so they can be rehabilitated and when they get back out into society, have a useful skill. Well, he won his club's international speech contest. And because he was considered low risk. They let him out on a pass to go and compete at the district level. So he won at the area level. He won at the division level. He went on to the district finals for his district in Florida and placed second in their international speech contest. He was hooked on speaking. And this is what he now wanted to do. He wanted to become a public speaker and go out and talk about what happened to him and why he went to prison and hopefully how he recovered when he got out. He became a model inmate after that. He formed a prison mastermind group for other prisoners, and he discussed how to achieve success with them. And they partnered to help each other succeed and get going. And Eric created his own 4-step process for achieving success, and he calls it ROCK. The R stands for raise your standards. The O stands for own your thoughts. The C stands for consistency and efforts. And K stands for know your values. And he used this method when he got out to become a top server at a local Outback restaurant. And from there, he was highly rated. He was able to gain a job in a high-end restaurant and was doing extremely well there. But he still had a dream of being a motivational speaker. And he worked with Jeff to develop a signature talk. And that's what we do if we want to professionally speak. You can't be a jack of all trades. You develop a signature talk. And his signature talk was about what happened in his life and how he turned himself around. He learned from his stepbrother, Jeff, half-brother Jeff, how to run a business. He landed a TEDx talk. And now Eric is a motivational speaker. He goes around to schools and to organizations with youth, and he talks to them about how his life turned bad and how they need to not make the same mistakes he did. So what did Eric do? Let's talk about 3 of the characteristics he had. He took responsibility for his actions. It took him a while, but once he was facing that prison term, he took responsibility. It's never too late to take responsibility for your actions. He sought guidance. He sought a mentor in his half-brother, Jeff, and he invested in himself. He worked hard at becoming a good public speaker. He took classes. He worked in Toastmasters, and he kept investing. He read to learn to make himself better. So those are the 3 characteristics Eric had: taking responsibility, seeking guidance, and investing in himself. Next, I would like to talk to you about Jenny Frings. And Jenny is the one person in my book that lives in the St. Louis area, but she didn't when most of this happened. She woke up in a hospital bed one day, no idea where she was or what happened. All she knew that she was in severe pain and connected to a lot of strange devices, and there was a bright light above her. She did not even realize at that time the long road she was about to travel. At the time, Jenny was living in Lynchburg, Virginia, and had twin boys that were about 1 year old. Her husband was being transferred to Memphis, but she stayed behind in Lynchburg to tie up some loose ends. And one weekend, she decided to drive down to Alabama and visit her family with the boys so they could see her boys. It was dark coming home, and in the distance, she saw some headlights coming towards her. As they moved closer, she swerved to avoid the collision, but it was too late. They collided head on. Now, the most important question for my audience: fortunately, the boys had new car seats. They were installed correctly, and they survived with just a few cuts and bruises. They were okay. But Jenny wasn't so fortunate. Jenny was transported by an air ambulance to the University of Tennessee, Knoxville. She was in a coma. And when her husband arrived, they told him, Jenny's probably not going to make it. And if she does, she's probably going to be in a vegetative state. They performed over 10 surgeries and 25 blood transfusions. After 7 days, Jenny woke up. She tried to move, but she couldn't because she was strapped to the bed. And when the nurse came, the first question out of her mouth is what any mother would ask: where are my babies? And they told her, your babies are fine. So she was a little bit relieved, but she was in a lot of pain. Jenny had multiple head injuries. Her left arm, her left leg, and left ankle were all shattered. So were her pelvis, hips, and right ankle. The doctors told her she would never walk again. But Jenny is stubborn. When she was stable, they transferred to a rehab center, and Jenny swore she was going to be able to walk someday. It took 4 months, but Ginny was finally able to stand out of her wheelchair. And 7 months later, when her twin boys were learning how to walk, Ginny tried to learn how to walk with her twin boys. And they made it a game. They raced to see who could walk first. And as Ginny will tell you, she came in third. Her two boys learned to walk before she did, but she did learn to walk slowly but surely. And this is a race she was glad that she lost. For the next 6 years, Ginny was in and out of hospitals and rehab centers for operations and treatment. And at the urging of her father-in-law, she used her story to become a motivational speaker. At this time, she wrote a book, Navigate with God, Journey Through Perseverance. A little bit later, she gave a talk to a group of police, firefighters, and teachers about her accident and the importance of correct car seat installation. This was a safety presentation. And after this, she was invited to host a weekly radio show. And by this time, she was in Cincinnati. And she did this for 6 years, hosting a radio show. In 2011, she moved to St. Louis. And at that time, she became enamored with the fitness industry. And she said, you know what? I am going to become a fitness trainer. Now, she was walking pretty well, but for her to be a fitness trainer, that was a stretch. But did I tell you before Ginny was stubborn? Yes, I did. Ginny went out and worked harder and harder and harder. In 2018, she became a certified personal trainer. And to this day, she is still training people at local gyms physically, and she is in tremendous shape. She also has a podcast that her and a friend of hers host. But Ginny has turned her life around because she did not listen to the people that told her, no, you can't do this. She said, you know what? I don't care what they say. I am going to move forward. So what are the traits that Ginny had? First of all, never give up. She never gave up when the doctors told her she would never walk again, or when she was able to stand up, or when she had to have other surgeries. She kept going. And when people laughed at her for saying, you can't be a fitness trainer, she kept going forward. She stayed positive no matter what the people around herself said. And Ginny was careful to surround herself with positive people. Have you ever surrounded yourself with negative people that every time you have a great idea or a goal that you want for yourself, they tell you all the reasons you can't do that? Well, Ginny shut them out, and Ginny made sure she was around positive people, and that kept her moving forward and going forward. So those are the traits that I wanted to cover. But what I also want to talk about is some of the other people in the book that I didn't tell you about. There is a woman who was trafficked and escaped. Another woman who was abused by not only her first stepmother, but her second stepmother as well. Somebody that lost a child at a young age. And as a parent, I just can't even fathom what they went through losing a child. Somebody that served in Iraq and came back and has PTSD. Another person down in Dallas that all through school, people were telling him how dumb he was and how he couldn't learn. He got bad grades until they realized why he couldn't learn, and he turned his life around and is happy. There's a woman born with a congenital heart disease and has been fighting that all of her life, but she found ways to make herself happy in life as well. So there are ways to do it, and that's what this book is about. These are everyday people, people that are like you and me. I didn't tell the story of a bunch of celebrities because you can say, well, you know what? Charlie Sheen's kid, he's got all kinds of money. He can send them to these fancy places, get them all that care. These are people just like us. And if they can do this, you can do it as well. And that's why I chose the people I chose, to show you that you could do it. And I talk about the 5 characteristics they had that kept them mired in that controversy, why they couldn't escape. And then I talk about the 11 characteristics in my book as to why they were able to escape. And these are characteristics that not every one of them had, but they were common with enough of them that you can use in any type of adversity you face in your life to overcome that adversity and as well become happy. So what is the next step? And that is for you to start looking at things on a positive nature. And I am going to open it up in questions for a few minutes, but this is a Toastmasters event. So I want to also talk to you about something I did tonight and how you can speak to groups a little bit better and be a little bit more effective when you speak to them. And that is, and I'm going to turn on your mics if you want, but the question I want to ask you is, what did I do tonight that engaged you or made you want to listen? And anybody can answer. And hopefully somebody found something I did that engaged them or made them want to listen.
Go ahead, Amy.
Okay. Kevin, to answer your question, I would say you use personal stories. I always find that a lot more interesting than individuals that are using theoretical stories or something very high level.
Excellent. And that was the one I was hoping somebody would come up with. And I didn't plant that with Amy. And hello to Donna and Steve Thelker, my sister and brother-in-law. But Darren LaCroix, the 2001 world champion of public speaking, has a mantra, and it's tell a story, make a point. When you speak, if you tell a story, people remember stories. You might remember Cherise's story about being out on the street homeless, or the homeless shelter she was in. You might remember Eric going to prison, or the accident, the car accident that Ginny had. But if I just spout off a bunch of facts and say, Ginny had a car accident, this happened to her, that happened to her, and don't weave it into a story, you're not going to remember. People forget most of what you say 10, 15, 20 minutes after you're finished talking. But if you tell a story, the chance of them remembering that is a lot higher. So tell a story as opposed to just spouting off facts and figures. And you can do this in professional presentations as well. Anything else anyone noticed that I did? And if not, I'll help you. Okay, I'll help. One of the things I did is, rather than just go in a story and start, Cherise was born in Oregon, I gave you a teaser at the beginning. So I told you that Cherise found herself sitting on a corner in New York City with her suitcase, homeless. Now that intrigues you. Then I went into the story. So now you know there is some drama coming up and you want to listen. And in my initial introduction tonight, I told you what you were going to get out of this. You're going to find some steps that you can take to overcome adversity in your life as well. So those are some of the things that I learned in Toastmasters, or taking classes from Darren LaCroix or Craig Valentine or other famous public speakers, learning how to engage your audience, how to hook your audience, because we're very selfish as people. If I'm not telling you what's in it for you when I speak, you're not going to listen. I've got 30 seconds to capture your attention when I start speaking. And if I don't capture your attention by then, there's a good chance I'm going to lose you. So I have to, instead of saying, hi, I'm Kevin Desrosiers and I'm this, and this, I am going to start right away by telling you why you should listen to me, what you are going to get out of this presentation. And if you do that, you're going to get your audience on the edge of their seats and they will be listening. But those are a few things I hope you learned from a Toastmasters aspect. But now I will open it up for conversation, but I do want to show you a copy of my book. This is Bridge Over Adversity, True Stories About Overcoming Personal Challenges. It will be available on Amazon within the next week or two. I have a lot of family things I have to do the next few days. It'll either get up on Amazon this weekend or the following weekend, but you can go to my website, which I'll give you later if you'd like to buy a personal signed copy and that. So it's open for questions. And Lori, did you have any questions in the chat?
I did not have questions in the chat yet, but I did have some questions for you.
Go ahead, Lori, please.
So I was just wondering, when you lost all that weight and you went through all those struggles, did you ever want to coach others to help them lose weight?
I did, and I do. However, therein lies the problem. My weight loss coach has a non-compete clause, and I'm going to him on my maintenance stage right now. I cannot compete with him, coach weight loss, for 2 years after the last day I go to him. So I would love to do that. However, I can't right now legally. But I do help people for non-pay. I give advice to people, but I do not do it for pay.
Wow.
But someday I may.
I would think if you go through all that challenge that you would want to share. So I was intrigued to know that, but thank you for sharing. Does anybody else want to ask a question? So I had another question.
Okay.
So there was 3 characteristics for Cherise. And I think you said she was open to change. She could stay focused on the changes, and she moved forward and became a teacher, correct? What other characteristics did she have that, or that you find in common? Like you said, maybe 5 characteristics.
Well, let me read you out of my book the 5 characteristics that held everybody in my book back, and then I will read you the 11 characteristics that they seem to share in common. I'll get my glasses on. So the 5 characteristics that kept them mired in their controversy were several of them had early adversity in their lives. They had problems as children. One of the characters in my book, Cole Whitty, she found out at an early age, and she had a rough life, but she found out every time she got hurt, she got extra attention from her parents. So when she broke an arm, her parents would dote all over her, and they would, give her all the attention she craved and wanted. So she learned at an early age that pain equals attention. And that was ingrained in her head. And there are others that early in their life, they were abused or they had other issues that happened. So they're hard to overcome because they get ingrained in our minds. The second was refusing advice. Several of the people that I wrote about in my book were offered advice from people, good advice, and Eric did that. His half-brother tried to give him advice on how to get going, and he finally said, I don't want this, and he left Denver. Third is they associated with bad influences, and there are several people in my book that were addicted to drugs, and there are people that hung around the wrong crowd. And if you're around the wrong crowd, you start behaving like the rest of that crowd. Addictions, and I talked about that. Several people in the book had addictions. And rationalization, they justified what they did. Eric thought what he was doing was right because he was able to live that great life. And so did some of the other people. They would rationalize why it was okay to be doing what they were doing. And then the 11 characteristics that they had in common that helped them escape their adversity. And let me just get to that page. First was they never gave up. 2, they took responsibility. 3, they had compassion for themselves. You can't go beating yourself up all the time and feeling sorry for yourself. And you have to have that positive attitude about yourself. And then 4 was stay positive. So you believe that you can do what you need to do. Keep moving forward. And I think that's different than never give up. You just take that step forward, a little bit step at a time. Be adaptable. And that's what Cherise was. Focus on what you can control. I mentioned that earlier. Investing in yourself. That's what Eric did and several of the other people in the book. They sought guidance. So they sought mentors and coaches. Surrounding themselves with positive people. It's important, just like I talked about, if you're in the wrong crowd, you start acting like them. If you're around positive people, you start espousing positive attitudes. And the 11th one, which is something that came out of nowhere, I didn't expect. Every single person I wrote about is giving back. Eric is out there giving back to people in the community. He's teaching kids not to go down the same road he went down. Cherise is teaching students and helping them set their career goals, making sure they're the right career goals. And Ginny is teaching people physical fitness and diet. She is helping people get better in their lives. So every single person that I wrote about in this book, the other 9 characters, as well as the 3 that I talked about tonight, they all are giving back in some way to society. So I just found that to be something I wasn't expecting, but it is an amazing quality, and I'm so glad that they did that. Hopefully that answers your question.
Yes, very well. Thank you.
Other questions? We still have about 12, 13 more minutes if you want.
Hey, Kevin, I put a question in the chat, but I'll go ahead and bring it here. You mentioned you gave a whole list of characteristics that you found these people to have. Of everything that you've seen these people do to change their lives, what would you say would be the key takeaway? Like if you were going to make one recommendation on what someone could do that would better their life, what would it be?
I would say invest in yourself. And you know, and that's something I'm a strong believer in. I am continually in a Toastmasters club, and I'm trying to get better every day. And if you're trying to get better every day, if Eric is trying to get better every day, become a better person, you know, that means if you're investing in yourself, you're trying to get off drugs, you're trying to develop a good skill. Same with Cherise, where, you know, she learned she went down the wrong path, but now she's investing in herself to find a new career and do other things. And the same with Ginny. Ginny kept investing in herself and finding things she liked, writing her book, learning how to write a book, learning how to do a podcast, learning how to do a radio show. But if you invest in yourself and take personal responsibility by making sure you get better yourself and don't rely on other people to do that, you have a great chance of getting ahead in life. It takes more than just that, but to me, that is probably the most important single one.
Does anybody else have any questions?
Okay, if not, I do have a couple slides I need to share because Toastmasters.
Can I interrupt?
Yeah, sure, Jim.
It's Jim. Could you say a little bit more, Kevin, about how the process you used to select the people that you ended up interviewing, or how did you was there one common thing that allowed you to make connections with all those different, such a diverse group of folks that are represented in the book?
It started by emailing a bunch of friends, and then they sent me people, and I interviewed about 18 to 20 people total. And I eliminated a couple of them. I had one person, I wanted somebody that went to prison. And I had one person, he embezzled, was rich when he went out. His family was rich, went to prison, got out in a year, and went right back to what he was doing. I didn't want that story. So I did a pre-interview with everybody. And then I did follow-up interviews after I started whittling down the list and getting to know the people. Because when I interviewed everybody, some of these people were telling me things they'd never told anybody else before. And during several of the interviews, we both broke down and cried, had to stop, regroup ourselves, and do it again. I learned that I could not do more than one interview every few days because it was so emotionally draining to hear the stories. The final interview with the person that was abused by both their stepmothers took 3.5 to 4 hours. And I was spent for 3 or 4 days. I couldn't function emotionally, physically, because it took that much out of me. And, you know, it was a process of gaining their trust, getting to know them, and giving them time to feel comfortable with me as well as me feeling comfortable with them. So some it was just interviewing a few times, others it was more than that. But it's, first of all, meeting them, giving them a high level, making sure they're interested, then just talking about life in general, getting to know each other on a personal basis, and eventually getting to their full story. And like I said, it was extremely emotional. And I'll tell you, if I do it again, and I hope to do a follow-up book someday, I might do Bridge Over Adversity, Overcoming Addictions, or Bridge Over Adversity, Overcoming Homelessness, or whatever it may be. But I need to block out more time for my own mental well-being because it was tough to do, very hard to do. Jim, does that answer your question adequately? Jim, did that answer your question? I can't hear you. I'll take that. I'll take that as a yes. Otherwise, you can call the house later. He knows the number.
Sometimes it's hard to find that unmute button.
Okay.
I did have a couple more, or one more question anyway.
Sure.
When you were talking about Eric, you mentioned a couple of books that his stepbrother recommended. Could you say those books again?
Sure.
Or let us know what those actually were.
Yeah, let me find those books again. Let's see.
I think one was it Awaken the Giant?
Awaken the Giant by Tony Robbins. And I'm trying to think what the other book was. And let's see.
Tony Robbins.
Tony Robbins. Yeah, famous. And Timothy Ferriss, The 4-Hour Workweek.
How do you spell his last name?
Ferris.
The 4-Hour Workweek?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I'm just putting in the chat.
Okay. Very good.
And I think, was there one other book too?
Those were the two. I'll tell you the best book ever written, and don't argue with me about the Bible. I'm excluding that, but How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. I read that book every year. It is a timeless classic. It was written in the 1930s, the best book ever written. And I'll argue with you all day on that. So.
Did Jenny have a book? Something about that.
She wrote a book. Yeah.
She wrote a book.
And if you just Google Jenny Frings on Amazon, you'll find she has a couple other books as well.
Okay.
Okay. And let's see. Am I sharing my screen?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay, hang on a second. Let me find this. Share and share. So this was put on by Toastmasters International, or Toastmasters District 8, which is the Toastmasters organization I'm in. And I would be remiss if I didn't tell you a little bit about Toastmasters. So the Toastmasters International website, if you want to learn more about Toastmasters, is www.toastmasters.org. The District 8 website, which is Toastmasters from Columbia, Missouri, all the way to Springfield, Illinois, and everything in between, with most of the clubs being in the St. Louis area, www.dist8tm.org. And if you want to email District 8 Toastmasters, and I misspelled Toastmasters, Toastmaters, okay. For more information, it's info@dist8tm.org. And I definitely would like to tell you about my book and my offerings. So my book, Bridge Over Adversity, True Stories about Overcoming Personal Challenges, is available on my website right now. You can get signed copies by going to my website at www.bridgeoveradversity.com. And it will be on Amazon either this coming weekend or the weekend after. Like I said, I have some family things I have to address first. And once that's taken care of, family always comes first, I will get it out on Amazon. I'm also a speaking coach. I work with people who want to become better public speakers. I will watch you speak or watch a recording of you speak, and then I will give you a step-by-step process on how to get better. And I'm coaching several people, and you'll see some things about that on my website and some testimonials. I'm also a keynote speaker and trainer. So I have two topics I speak about. One, I speak about my book and the stories that are in my book. And I speak about the art of public speaking, how to become a better public speaker. And you can email me at kevin@bridgeoveradversity.com. Although everybody on this call knows my phone number, they know how to get a hold of me, so you don't need that, but that is how to get a hold of me, and that's a picture of my book cover. And thank you to Andrew Doty, who is on this call, who is my editor and helped me get that cover designed and made sure that grammatically my book was correct, because he made thousands of corrections. And that is all I have.
Well, Kevin, thank you so much for sharing all your information here. It's just very well spoken and great to hear so much positive remarks and people doing well. And I think it gives everybody encouragement to do well themselves. We thank you for partnering with us and bringing these great resources to our library's viewing customers. And just so you know that we do have a website for the library. It's mylibrary.org. And there's more virtual programs there at this time. And many you can go back and watch the recordings, as you will this one. We get the recording up tomorrow. So thank you all for joining us. Appreciate your staying with us tonight.
And thank you for hosting me. Have a wonderful evening, everyone.